Hi, Sandy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
Welcome to the ADK Rock and Metal channel, and today we're doing an album review for the up-and-coming new album Revolutionist by Drip Fed Empire. What we got on the details on this, Kirk?
Yeah, so they're an English band. This is their debut album. The press are describing this as new metalcore, and it's a self-released record, and it comes out on the 26th of January 2024.
I found this interesting in their press release because they've listed it as sort of, as you said, like new metalcore stroke new metalcore, but also in the press release they talk about them being as alt metalers. I was like, so pick which one is it, guys? Come on, just get your facts right. Are you alt metalers or are you new metalcore? What are we actually talking about here? Because they are very different. That is a very different description. I think when you look at what bands that they've been compared to, so Rage Against the Machine, Enter Shikari, Bring Me the Horizon, are probably bands we all know, but I don't think any of those bands are bands that any of us really own albums for or listen to on a regular basis. And that probably does reflect for me personally in my review of this album, as it's straight away isn't really naturally my style of music that I would regularly listen to. So I've been very aware of that when I was writing my review about it, was that I was outside of my comfort zone of styles of listening. But if it's all right with you, I'm going to kick off with my kind of overall thoughts on this particular album. So it is an 8-track album. Well, it's not. It's a 6-track album. Let's just get that out of the way straight away, in my opinion. You can't have an intro track. Sorry, that's bollocks. Sorry, guys. I literally tag it onto the actual track, but do not include it in your album. Who listens to an intro track on its own in the day of streaming? Doesn't exist. So that doesn't account for me. Called Wandering Soul. Doesn't make any sense. And System Reset, which is a sample track, which is just basically kind of a segue interlude track halfway through. So I'm excluding those in my review because I don't see any real point of going into any major detail on them, because I would never listen to them in a streaming platform as an individual track. So give me more. Coming off of that intro was real kind of build up, and then you get it to Give Me More, and it doesn't really even segue naturally into that track, which is what made me kind of go, hang on, what's going on here? It's kind of a synth rock track. It's got some hooky elements in there. It's kind of reminds me of like that Marilyn Manson era industrial music that we had from that period. A little bit of swagger of Hacktivist in there. Also made me kind of think of like where we have like the Japanese culture of getting the audience participation, because there was definitely elements of that. We see that as well with bands like Electric Callboy, which again is they've been on support tours with them. It's catchy, and I am going a little bit by a few track by tracks because there were some points I want to make, but it's catchy, but it's not a musical standout track. And that's kind of what my entire experience of this album has been, were catchy hooks, but nothing that quite musically was memorable. By the time I got to the next track, I couldn't remember the previous track of any kind of significance. At the time while listening to it, it was bouncy, it was catchy. I was like, yeah, okay, pop bouncing along. Again, MK4 had elements of Skindred in their Pitch Shifter, bands of which I really, really enjoyed, but they have got memorable elements to them. It just was very poppy, very bouncy in a lot of times, with some elements of distorted guitars. Hollywood Undead was another band that I kind of pulled out that I could throw them in there with. There were elements, I would say, that they're trying to go for a Rage Against the Machine vibe, but they just don't succeed because they don't have the aggressive nature in the vocal delivery. So he was riffing. He was got great, good vocal flow. But I kind of got to the end of the album and I was just sort of going, yeah, it was fine. But I didn't really connect anywhere with the actual track. I have got a little bit of a summary, but I'm going to save that for when I do my scoring at the end to give you, because I want to explain why my summary is where it is. Kirk, what did you think of this album?
First thing I'll pick up on track number 1 and 6. I really do like, because I'm listening to this as an album, as a linear narrative. But I understand what you're saying. If you have this on a Spotify random playlist and track number 1 comes up, doesn't tell you anything about the band. You treat it like an album, though, as a story, and listen to it in chronological order. It certainly does fit in. That, I mean, it's only 1 minute and 38 seconds. It's called Wandering Soul, but it feels like you're inside the belly of the beast. with like these carnivorous noises and vicious gale force winds, and then you get this drum pattern emerging. You're right, it doesn't quite segue into Give Me More. Now, this is the standout track for me, track number 2. Industrial metal groove, open hi-hat drums, really love that. And more importantly, the synthesizers are not window dressing. Clearly, this band, like everything from Skinny Puppy through to The Prodigy and Nine Inch Nails, and that arpeggiated synth is constant throughout, and the guitars are not lost in the mix. So I went into this album fearing the worst. New metalcore, I do like Code Orange. I don't like them being called that, perhaps for snobbish reasons. And recently, some of the stuff we've been listening to that is more inclined towards new metal, I've been a bit more open-minded and started to enjoy. So this one, I did fear the worst, but no, if anything, this has surprised me. Because especially, did you say there's a lack of aggression? I thought that the aggression was quite high, especially in the choruses. Give Me More really is what I've always wanted Static X to sound like. And you've got this Ollie Sykes metalcore, Bring Me the Horizon type chorus. I mean, no matter what you say about Bring Me the Horizon, I know they're a divisive band. They're phenomenally successful. And my God, they've probably taken more risks than any artist in guitar music over the last 20 years. And I think they capture some of the best elements of that Sheffield band. MK4, I like how the opening synth is a precursor for the riff. What really impressed me about this song was that it's not just verse, chorus, verse, chorus. It's almost as if they've taken a song from a rehearsal and then remixed their own song and presented that as the original. And I really like that disruptive way of writing music. Did anyone else pick up on the obvious homage to Charlie by The Prodigy in the mid-late? It's like absolute Prodigy worship. I'm not too sure if that really goes well with the song in MK4, but I like what they're doing there. They're just showing, look, if you think we're a new metal band with this, if you think that we're an industrial metal band with this, they're always second guessing you. And that really does give you a sense of excitement. The adrenaline thrill is very high. The Work of God, yeah, new metal dynamics, but they've used them really well in this, sharp guitars, Rage Against the Machine grooves. Dave, I thought you'd be all over this album. Pitch Shifter are clearly one of the main influences. I know you love that band. I'm just surprised that you didn't get into this as much as I did. I was expecting to be the person who delivers a surprise verdict here, that he actually enjoyed it. Digital Drug, electronic beats in there as well. I like the English twang to the vocals. I don't think you can listen to this and think, oh, this is reductive of the American bands of the early 2000s. That Bring Me the Horizon, obviously. I think they even identify as a new metal band at the moment, don't they? They are a big influence, but they're clearly taking in that aggro clubland type music that the Prodigy were doing before they evolved into like a genre-bending rock band. Now, System Reset. This is an important song, track number 6. You have this soothing, robotic female vocal, and it transports you to this like celestial world where you're in a white room, and the digital state, which you can assume is now government subcontracting services to big tech. I think that's what they're trying to go for here with this dystopian vibe. And you have this, I think there's a quote in there, welcome, please take your time to familiarize yourself with the new surroundings. And it's talking about, we're here to reprogram your body, mind, and soul. I think this really does work as a segue into Arcane, which is track number 7, the solemn piano, electronic grooves. Probably the best riff on the album as well. That classic new metal bounce riff, ascending chromatic order. Do, 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 do. Korn were obviously the best at doing that, and Deftones. They use that really well. Doesn't sound like a new metal song, though. Really good, crunchy breakdown. And then finally, Invaders, probably the second best song on the album. That's the final track, track number 8. Andy, I am sure that you'll have picked up on those 2 breakdowns at the end. They just get slower and slower. Fucking brilliant way to end the album. Pitch Shifter again, I hear is the main influence. What's the album, Dave? Pitch Shifter with the song Microwaved on it.
Is that Descent?
Is it? Or is it pitchshifter.com? Did they have an album called that?
Pitchshifter.com is the other one, yes. I can't remember if it was on Descent or .com.
It makes me want to go back and listen to that after this. I know what you mean about Skindred as well. But if you like Pitch Shifter, Prodigy, I would say Static X, Korn, you're going to enjoy this album, 9 Inch Nails. So, yeah, I'm surprised how much I enjoyed this. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Kirk. A lot of the bands you two have mentioned are not my my music. Pitch Shifter, Skindred was mentioned. The bands in there by Ennett Shikari and before Bring Me the Horizon. These are not bands that I've even heard of some of their material. So it's very hard for me to make a comparison to this style of music. And this is very much outside my comfort zone. I'm glad you mentioned the Prodigy, Kirk. That was obviously what jumped out at me on a number of tracks, particularly as you said, MK4, and even the first track, Proper Give Me More, was very Prodigy in my opinion. I thought also. I've made sort of a note that it's sort of reminded me of the music assembly era of Theatre of Tragedy, because they went in sort of like a electronic industrial vibe, sort of in when that had been sort of late 90s, early 2000s with Liv Christine. So I'm very much a fan of those albums, although it is very different from the usual stuff I listen to. Theatre of Tragedy being the band that sort of produced those albums. We often talk about my views of band names. I think if I'd have seen this in our inbox or on a playlist, I would definitely have bypassed it, because it doesn't say a lot to me. But now you hear the songs, and particularly System Reset, which I really liked as well, Kirk, what they're trying to deliver with the band name. It is sort of like that government trying to control society, the dystopian sort of future which may happen, and it's a frightening thought. And System Reset, as you said, gave me that very same image, like somebody in a empty room with a massive screen with a female face on there, delivering this message saying you've got to complete this questionnaire and you've got to answer the questions correctly before you're released back into society. And I thought that was quite sort of disturbing. And the way I had it downloaded onto my computer, that came up as the last track. I don't know why. I think it might have been sort of alphabetical order or something, but that seemed to be a really good way of wrapping up the album. When I sort of delved further in, obviously it's track 6 and sort of moves on to Arcane and Invaders, but it sort of fitted well as the end, the way I was listening to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to some of the other songs, Give Me More, I think was a standout track. MK4, my first thoughts on that was, is it a homage to the Mortal Kombat games? I think they're more intelligent songwriters than that, and obviously it clearly wasn't. Although you wouldn't look out of place on a Mortal Kombat film soundtrack. There's very similar sort of electronic dance, industrial music on those albums. Sort of 3 of the tracks I thought were sort of very bass heavy and single note riffs, but then the sort of final 2, Arcane Invaders, were sort of more sort of chunky, traditional sort of metal riffs. But yeah, I thought the aggression factor was there in the music. In the vocals. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised. It to me, I enjoyed it more on every listen. It just wasn't sort of too short at the beginning, because it was very sort of dance, very Prodigy, and very outside the sort of realms of the music that I listened to. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm surprised at my response to this album.
Okay, well, we should really get to the scoring. Now, we score it out of 4 different categories. So we have either a bid it, a trade it, a stream it, or a buy it. Now, I'll go first, but before I give you my results, as you say, I will answer what Kirk was saying, that he was surprised about, obviously, my kind of, I guess, negativity on the album. But all the bands that we've talked about today are bands that I listen to quite a lot. So this is actually a genre that I know a lot. I listen to a lot more, because there are obviously bands like Dead by April, Soulbound. I can hear the DNA of this band. So they talk about their distinctive, unique sound. To me, it sounds like a lot of borrowing, which is fine, because that's what musicians do. They use their influences. But I didn't hear anything very distinct in this band. I just heard a lot of Rage Against the Machine vocal delivery, Soulbound bouncy riffs, Dead by April, dual vocal elements, hacktivist sampling. I just heard all the different elements, and as I already listened to all this sort of music, I was like, I didn't hear anything new in this album at all. I just heard lots of like borrowing from other bands, which gave me no reason to want to have to listen to the album again. So that gives me a different viewpoint, I guess, from what you guys might have, and I think that's important to talk about as well, because it's important from that genre. I want to talk one thing before I get to the final scoring on it is they called the album Revolutionist, which historically revolutionists have generally been young men willing to risk everything, even their lives, in the pursuit of the cause, or a person who believes in a revolution as a means of bringing about change. I didn't get that from the music. Now, not talk about the lyrics. Now, the lyrics were obviously trying to tell you a story, an element like that, and to get you that, but I just didn't get it musically. This didn't feel like something that was talking about a revolution. I heard various bands and samples from beats that as back as early as the 90s. So if it's talking about revolution, this is music that's been going around for 40 years. Or 30 years now. Sorry, 30 years. I'm in the 2030s by now for some reason. But nowadays people listen to this and they go, "Oh well, this is brand new. This is amazing." I'm like, no, just go back, listen to stuff from Clawfinger, Pitch Shifter, back in the 90s. This is they were doing all this, Prodigy, etc. So you've had this before. There isn't anything new in this. But you're talking about the lyrical element. The lyrical element, maybe. I actually thought this album was written with singles in mind from a streaming platform. I didn't enjoy it from a start to finish element, but I would have possibly enjoyed it more from listening to it track by track, ad hoc throughout the year. I'd have probably got into it a bit more. I did actually feel at the end of this, for my scoring, is I felt the band was a good example of the genre of music they're working within. So if you're into bands like Hacktivist, you would enjoy this. But for me, I love to do my comparisons. It was like eating a big bowl of vanilla ice cream. That's what it felt like listening to this album. It was nice. I enjoyed it. As I got near the end of it, I was getting rather full and feeling a bit bloated. And every so often, I got a freeze bloody headache, which is how I felt going through this album. I did enjoy it, but at the end of it, I'd rather have had something a bit more surprising and a bit more flavoursome, like a Rocky Road or something like that. So my scoring, I'm actually going to be generous in my from a channel because I'm a bit biased. I'm going to give it a stream it. Personally, it would be a trade it, I have to say, because there isn't anything for me. But I think that's me being a bit too judgmental. I think that the album is good enough that I would recommend people that if you're into that style of music, you should definitely stream it. Kirk, there you go. Over to you. What's your score for it?
I think you should actually trade it. I know that you want people to listen to it, but your personal opinion, I think we need to change that to a trade it. For me, stream it. I wouldn't buy it only because I think it could do with another 2 songs. It's quite a short album. I'm trying to think of a food analogy now to be your stream one. It's like when you buy a tortilla wrap and you think, "Oh, this isn't going to fill me up," and it actually surprised me how much I enjoyed it. It satiated me. Terrible analogy there, but I just thought I'd try to.
You should have said it's how it's like a tortilla wrap, and you eat it, and then you get halfway down and realize it's all just wrap at the bottom. You need a few more bits of fillings just to fill it out. There you go. That's what you're talking about.
But this is. I keep saying that it pleasantly surprised me, but I really like the production on this as well, and the way that they've used synths, and they're not just window dressing, and the guitars are never lost in the mix. They're really crunchy. There's a good punch to them. So yeah, I would stream this. But Dave, I understand what you're coming from. Unlike me and Andy, you listen to this music more often. So to us, because we don't, it probably is a bit more exciting, isn't it? But they're definitely doing something interesting here, and I'd be keen to follow the progress of their career.
Okay, and for you, Andy, what was your score on the Doors?
Yeah, I'm not going to attempt a food analogy. Just one more comment from me regarding the album. I'm surprised neither of you sort of picked up on it or mentioned it, but the only negative thing I can say is that I was pleased that the sort of spoken word effect-laden vocals were used to a minimum. They had their place in some of the songs, but it wasn't overkill. It wasn't used too much throughout the songs. There were some really good aggressive vocal performances. So that's the only negative for me. But yeah, I've got no, as I said at the beginning, I've got no reference point to the bands that you've both mentioned throughout your reviews. So to me, it is new and exciting, and maybe not a throwback to, sort of Clawfinger and some of the other bands that have been mentioned, because I've never listened to those. Maybe I should. So perhaps in the comments there'll be some recommendations for me to check out, and for bands that are in this genre. But I'm going to surprise you all and say I would buy this. I really, really enjoyed it. I was so surprised that I did. And as I say, it got better and better every time I listen to it, and I will continue to do so if I purchase a CD.
Okay, so the overall scoring then from the ADK channel is that's it as a stream it then.
Stream it.
So that is our overall review. So stream it for the new Revolutionist album from Drip Fed Empire. Now, if you enjoy our video today, please do like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.